Is there any public comment on this item? Any board comment questions? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. Number 5, reports, CEO report.
So I'm very pleased to announce that we are completing our air traffic control radio upgrade. This is our long-awaited control tower upgrade, and Jason's leading that effort. So if the board has any specific questions on that.
Is this related to ADSB?
No.
This
is just our, it's just our control radios. So far, so good. Jason and one of our controllers, Carlos, went to a demo in Texas a couple weeks ago to test the system and are more than pleased with the system. So it should be a pretty noticeable upgrade for the airport.
These are just the aircraft side.
Yeah. This is the $240,000 radio upgrade.
Correct.
And then painting, we're doing a lot of painting. We're finishing up our Taxiway Bravo project, hopefully by the end of the month. We should have that completed. It's only been as a result of the amount of rain that we're getting that we had to put the painting on hold. So that should be a noticeable upgrade around the airport as well. That's about all I wanted to highlight in the CEO report, unless the board has any questions.
I just have one comment about Hangar 75 behind it. We're getting some pretty big potholes there because of all this rain.
Okay.
Just started to open up. Might be if we can get to them before they get huge.
Okay, I'll chat with Floyd and his team about that.
Board committees, we have none. Board of directors.
I'd like to make a report on Plain Crazy Saturday in this room. Saturday, we had Chad Slattery, one of the world's great aviation photographers, and he gave a really great presentation. It was really interesting, and I told him he just published a new book on how to take airplane pictures, and I told him I wish I'd had that book about 20 years ago. But a lot of he talks an awful lot about post-production. A lot of that stuff wasn't around in those days, so, but it was a really good program. We had full house.
Any other board comment? Move on to item 6, public comment, not on the agenda. Members of the public may make comments to the board on items not on the agenda. Is there any public comment? Yes, sir, Mr. Rutan.
Oh, thank you. My name is Dick Rutan, and I live in Mojave. Anyway, I want to address the board with reference to the airport change the name to Burt Rutan. And just spend, I want to talk a little bit about the history of how this came about. This has been some months ago. One of the young engineers looked around at the airport and he says, "Wow, look at all the things that are going on around here." And probably, arguably, a lot of them wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for one person, Burt Rutan. Most of you are familiar with him. He came here in the mid-1970s, moved into one corner of one of the abandoned barracks over here, and it grew to Rutan Aircraft. Burt actually was the first one to institute and utilize fiberglass as primary structure for a lot of his airplanes. He moved over to scale composites, and it grew to what we know today. And when he talked about the name change, I looked around to see how many airports had actually had somebody's name associated with it. And I found that there were more examples. There were probably a very few percentage of all the airports around that does not have somebody's name associated with it. From Bob Hope to JFK to Hartsfield and so forth, and you know the rest of them. The significance that I want to portray is, and that is a couple of significant things in aviation. And way back in, there was a couple of guys in Dayton, Ohio that tried to fly an airplane. And at that time, nobody ever thought that they could actually fly an airplane. It was something beyond anybody's consideration. And they went out and demonstrated that, and look what happened. But the most significant thing about what happened back in those days was that somebody finally realized, wait a minute, these guys went out and flew an airplane. Who in the hell are they? They're guys that build bicycles, a bicycle shop. And they did it. And so then it was very obvious that everybody looks around and says, well, hell, if a bicycle mechanic can fly an airplane, maybe we can too. And look what happened. The rest is history. You know, Burt Rutan came here and he built scaled composites. He employed a lot of people and make one airplane a year. Very significant. And in 1980, he suggested to his older brother that maybe it's possible to fly non-stop, non-refueled around the world. There wasn't anybody within 1,200 miles of this place that thought that that could be possible, including the person he was talking to. But he thought it could be done. And with a lot of work and a lot of help from this airport, as a matter of fact, that supported that, he did. Burt Rutan designed an airplane, provided the motivation, and that damn thing flew non-stop around the world. Now what happened after that was that Burt established his bona fides as somebody to be reckoned with. Who in the hell is this guy? He's a pretty smart guy. Then something else real significant happened. Because of the bona fides as an aircraft designer and innovative creator, and he went to a billionaire. And he got a billionaire to fund something that he says he's going to make an astronaut. Now, it wasn't just like way back when. There's not a person within 12,000 miles who thought that a guy who builds home-built airplanes could go in and build an airplane that would go 3 times the speed of sound, high enough to be a bloody astronaut, for God's sakes. But he did that. And it was his innovation and his creativity to do that. And they went out and did that. Now, the company that he built in itself is pretty important. There's a lot of people who are gainfully employed. The billionaires came. They set up 2 new companies over here. And there's a lot of people that are very successfully employed. And if you look at all the cars that are parked out there, and I don't know what the numbers are, but just the monthly payroll for those 2 large companies would choke your eyes. And the affluence of this airport, mainly because some of the nice salaries that people have here, is because of Burt Rutan, because he brought millionaires here. Now the companies that he started in itself, I mean, anybody can start a company, and a lot of people have done that. But the historical thing, the most significance of what happened at that thing is the same thing way back in the bicycle shop, is that an individual started something that nobody thought was even possible, and it spawned a brand new industry. Now nobody's building Voyagers anymore, thank God. But they are going to build a new industry, just like way back when. Civilian access to space. Burt Rutan is the father of that. He single-handedly did that. His courage, in spite of everybody around us said there's no fine way that that could happen. He went and did that. Now because of that one thing, we have an airport that's called Mojave Air and Spaceport. That's the brand. But the person that gave you that brand was Burt Rutan, for crying out loud. And if there's anybody, because of that one thing, not because he created all these jobs and so forth, that would not rate him the honor of having an airport named after him. But the fact that he is the father of civilian access to space, a whole new industry is going to spawn. And historically, looking back on that, that would be pretty evident. So that factor alone, I would think, that he himself should be considered as having a name change, the namesake of this airport. And I'm told that maybe we don't want to ruin the brand. Well, gentlemen, ladies, that's Burt Rutan's brand. He gave you that brand. And I also heard that maybe we'll put his name on a 70-year-old World War II building I don't know that history would look back and say that that was the proper thing or the opportunity to do that. One thing is I wasn't here, but there were some other people that proffered some different things. And there was a lot of people in this airport who thought maybe that was a pretty good idea. In fact, when I started this, some of the people I talked to was Zach Scribner, the county supervisor, because after all, it's going to be in his district. What did he think about that? He thought it was a great idea, and he got a hold of somebody else, the majority leader of the United States Congress, Kevin McCarthy. He says, wow, that seems like a pretty good idea too. Maybe he's worthy of that. So anyway, I understand that it hasn't come an agenda item, and I could be wrong. But all of that considered, and all the input, I would have thought that this board, it should have come from this board instead of some little engineer that thought that may be a good idea. The board's responsibility. Now, it would be nice to be spawned by the board. Now, the board could either decide to do it or not. Have an agenda item and have a vote. Or the board would also, if they decided to do that, they could determine how it's done. Not anybody else from the audience. How they were going to manage your brand in the airport and the person who actually gave you the brand. And I hope they reconsider that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. We'll move on to closed session. Thank you, everybody.